All right, sorry about that. This is what happens sometimes, clicking the wrong buttons. All right, so I've got Heidi on the screen here. I'm probably going to go back to the beginning here. So sorry about that. Anyway, this is Heidi Powell. She has her own eating disorder story. I did Victoria Garrick last week, and go back and watch that. There's so many of these kinds of videos. So I get a lot of requests. And people are like, you should review this and you should review that. I'll get to it at some point. I have a lot of points I want to make here. I'm probably only going to get through the first, I don't know, 10. I don't want this to go beyond like 40 minutes. I'll answer super chats as they come, and then I'll answer all the other questions towards the end. I don't expect too many of those tonight. But anyway, here we go. Heidi Powell's eating disorder story.
Today we're going to go a little bit different direction, and we're going to talk about something that is a lot more serious than most videos you see on here. Serious, but also necessary, because eating disorders are running rampant.
Yes, they are running rampant. And the reason why they're running rampant is several things. But I think it's the spread of Western beauty standards, right? You're seeing that in South America and the Middle East and India. But you're also seeing a lot more convenience, right? You go to a developing country and you see KFC, you see McDonald's, you see Taco Bell. Okay, so those restaurants are seen as like high value. If you go to one of those restaurants in the developing world, it's like, wow, we feel rich now. Here, we kind of disparage them, right? Oh, it's greasy fast food. But people are becoming more sedentary. They're spending more time at home, especially in the post-COVID world, working from home. So you have all of that. Western beauty standards, they want women to be fit, not necessarily thin. I don't think thin is necessarily the ideal, at least not anymore. Maybe back in like the 80s it was. I think fit is the new thin. That's what I always say. But still, there is pressure on women to be fit. If you're a woman and you want to attract a man, how do you attract a man? You look good, right? Men are visual. Men look for visual qualities. It's just how we are. How does a man attract a woman? He has other things, but still fitness, physical looks, that's still really important. So he has to stay in shape. He's got to have, shoulders, pecs, V-taper, abs, 7 or 8% body fat. Most men are never going to achieve that. I haven't achieved that. It takes a lot of work to do that. You have to be really dedicated. But still, my point is, there is pressure. There is pressure to look better, to have a certain physique. That's at least my theory. Anyway, let's keep going here. I'm going to skip like the first 2 minutes. It wasn't too much I wanted to talk about.
Reading your history after, because it's so embarrassing when you're inside of it.
Yeah, there is a lot of embarrassment. Most disordered eaters don't tell anybody. They might go onto a Facebook group. A Facebook group is very like anonymous, right? You go into an anonymous forum, but people in your periphery, your friends, parents, family, you're not going to tell them. I mean, maybe they do. I never did. Why? Guilt, embarrassment, the shame of it. It's like, what are they going to think of me? And also, what are they going to do about it? That's another problem. As you're going to see, Heidi's parents didn't handle this too well. They were good parents, but parents are not well equipped to deal with this kind of stuff. So you'll see that her father tries to force feed her, which is not the best way to deal with, an anorexic daughter. But most of the time, these kinds of problems, they grow in the dark. Most people binge in secret. Most people purge in secret. That's how it works. And so it grows and grows and grows. Why? The embarrassment. I think another reason too is because I always thought that recovery was right down the road. It's like, well, why tell them now when I'm going to recover in the next 2 or 3 weeks? And it was based on a very faulty misunderstanding of what recovery was. So I didn't get it. Now I'm going to play from here because she says something that I think is really important.
Other women and men. If you're a man watching this, you're not alone either.
You're not alone either. Yeah, a lot of men too. Why? Because there is pressure, right, to look good. It's the part of life. That pressure is never going to go away. Why did I start caring so much how I looked when I was 21? Isolation, immaturity, insecurity, had no plans, had no goals. Didn't necessarily want the attention, but I wanted to be fitter and healthier than everybody else. I wanted to be better than anybody else. I was looking for my place in the world. I think that's really what it was. And I didn't have any other big skills in life. I was majoring in, this is a true fact, majoring in geography. And now, as much as I liked geography and still do, there was no action plan there. It's like, what are you going to do with geography? These days, you can start, a geography channel, on YouTube. What's that? There's a big geography now or something like that. He probably generates his income on all the ad spend on that channel. No, but that option wasn't available to me, when I was at geography. Anyway, I'm just saying I had no plans, no vision, no future. It was that immaturity, the insecurity. That's why a lot of people in their teens, early 20s, they develop these kinds of disorders. But yeah, men, it's definitely growing, especially binge eating. I would say 30 or 40% of binge eaters are men. And then you look at bulimia, anorexia, other types of disorders, it's predominantly women, but a good portion are men. All right.
I have a handful of friends that are men that struggled and or struggle with the same thing. Mm-hmm. Also, I want you to know that there is hope. Before I go too far into this, there is hope.
Great. Yes, there is hope. I don't think anybody is beyond repair. Like there's no case that can't be solved. Even the worst cases of, say, bulimia or binge eating. Yes, there is always hope. There is a solution out there, especially today. When I was dealing with this late 2000s, like orthorexia, like the beginning stages of my eating disorder. No, my eating disorder didn't end for a while, but when it first started, who did you go to? You found a therapist and you went to go see a therapist, and you didn't have the coaches, you didn't have Instagram, you didn't have Facebook groups or anything like that. I mean, there was really no recourse, especially for somebody like me who was so isolated. What was I going to do? So anyway, there is hope. It doesn't matter if you've been struggling with this for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. There's always hope. Okay. Don't give up. Let's see. A little ahead here.
Free from it and healed from it. I actually do. And I'm a big believer that once an addict, always an addict, right? So
I'm not a believer in that. I don't think you're always going to be in recovery. At some point you can declare victory. I don't know when you do that. It's not like there's a big parade outside and says, "Yeah, I'm recovered." It's not like that. It's not this one day thing where you are disordered one day, not disordered the next day. That was the fallacy that I kept falling for. It's like I can just declare the day when I am going to say that I am recovered. Now, is the chance zero that she could relapse? No, it's never zero. It's never zero for me. It's never zero for anybody. If you have a history of repeating these habits over and over, there's always a chance that it could come back. Always that chance. Because you've repeated it so many times, it's like you can never completely get rid of it. And I don't mean like, oh, you're going to struggle with urges the rest of your life. That's not my point. But it's like when you cut yourself and then you have a scar, it's never quite the same. The scar, you can tell where a scar is. That's kind of how eating disorders are, but once an addict, always an addict. Not really. I mean, that would be like, you would have to deal with urges and cravings the rest of your life, and you don't have to. I don't think Heidi does. I don't. All right. Anyway, let's skip ahead a few seconds. Wish I could just type in the time.
If I become numb to it, I do know that it can take over. I believe that bad patterns can start creeping in again.
Yes, exactly. They can come back under perfect conditions. Hey, you have that perfect storm where it's like everything comes together all at once and the behaviors reemerge. That is certainly possible, but the chance is very low. That's the point I'm trying to make, but it's never going to be absolutely zero. Especially when you've binged and purged hundreds of times. That's a very ingrained habit. But I don't foresee Heidi ever relapsing. And I don't think she wakes up every day and says, well, I hope I don't relapse today. I hope today is not the day where I relapse. And even if she did, could she bounce back? That's even more important. Maybe she has this paroxysm, just this like one-off episode. But she comes back the next day and says, whoa, that was crazy. As long as it doesn't become a habit and a lifestyle again, it shouldn't be a problem. I don't foresee her having another relapse. I don't. She has so many good things going for her, which is really important. We'll see that later in the video. Anyway, let's talk about education.
Getting you to where you want to be. And I'll talk about that in my story. I believe once you know, you can't unlearn it. A lot of us struggle. You probably struggle right now, or you struggled in the past because you lacked the understanding that you needed. You lacked the.
Yeah, you need to understand how it works. You need to understand like the brain and why you have these habits, and you need to understand, the nature of habits, like why you have this, why do you keep repeating it. That is one component, but you also need to understand how to break it. So I don't think it's just pure education. Think about nutrition, like public health. If all we had to do to make people eat right, a whole foods diet, we would just need nothing more than education. I think that has been refuted, right? How much education do we have on what a healthy diet is? Well, the next time you pass by a fast food restaurant, look at the drive-through. Look at how many people are in there. Look at the carts at the grocery stores. What are people buying? There is so much information out there. We have more than enough education. If it were 1980, I could forgive people. It's 2021. There is no excuse not to know what to eat. There are books, there are forums, there are videos. It's like, how much do we have to tell people to do this? And yet they keep doing the same thing. So it's more than education. It's also guidance, accountability, the pathway, all of that. I wish it could just be education. Like, this is how it works, and this is why you are bulimic, and there's more to the story, is what I'm saying. All right, let's talk about her parents. And no, we're not going to blame her parents. This is a very nice family here. I think she's a little older than me. I think she said she's 38. So she's a few years ahead of me. I don't know which one is her, but this looks like late 80s or something. Anyway.
Muscle Barbie. And my dad was like Mr. T / Mr. Clean. Like big muscles, bald head, all of the things, intimidating and amazing. And they were so into fitness. I mean,
her parents were into fitness. Okay, so it's not like she grew up in a place where there were no standards. Nobody cared about fitness. Nobody was talking about eating right and a healthy lifestyle. So, I mean, she had the advantages here. She was exposed to a healthy life. And despite all of that, she became anorexic and bulimic and a binge eater. She had a very good household, good home environment, a dad that looked like, what'd you say, Mr. T, like a white Mr. T or something. And then, Ken and Barbie, husband and wife. And yet she still became this. Which tells you that you can have every advantage and a perfect home environment and great parents and still fall into this rut. Yeah. So I don't blame my parents either. This is like traditional therapy. It's like, well, tell us about your childhood and your parents and, what did they say to you? And sometimes that could be the case, but definitely not in Heidi's case.
The seatbelt pressing up against my stomach, and I remember seeing a roll at 8 years old. Oh, no. I was a twig. So 8 years old. So if she was born in, let's say, 83, okay, she's 8 years old. This is like 1990, 1991. Even then, I mean, she didn't have a smartphone back then. I mean, kids these days, they have smartphones when, the day they're born. So she saw something. She saw some advertisement, some magazine, something on TV. And there were mass media back then, enough to know that having rolls around your stomach was not attractive. If this had been 1900, would she have cared? I don't know. I don't know what the beauty standards were back then. Less different than we're told. I don't think women were like really plump back then, but only 8 years old. And so now she's already going on a diet. I mean, that's really sad. It's like you don't even have a childhood. It's like at least wait until you're 18 to start doing stuff like this. But somewhere she learned. All right, so skip ahead. Now she's in like high school. This is where things start to go off the rails. I didn't understand actually what a great, healthy, fit body that I had. I didn't understand how beautiful I was.
Well, a lot of beautiful people, they underestimate their own beauty. It's almost like they have some form of body dysmorphia. So when you see somebody at the gym and she's got a great body, just the whole nine, understand she probably doesn't look in the mirror and say, wow, I'm so attractive. She's probably comparing herself to somebody else. She's probably like, wow, I need to fix this. I don't have enough definition or tone or whatever. So what's that saying? Comparison is the thief of joy. Yeah, in some ways it was, but beautiful people have their own hangups. They have their own insecurities. They're never good enough. So this is where her high standards are going to come into play. This is where her dedication and her focus. This is where it's going to hurt her. If she used that dedication and focus to be the best, that's great. But she uses it the wrong way. She's using it to find, imperfections. She's never satisfied. She's always looking for something to improve. All right. Anyway, she was beautiful. Everybody thought she was beautiful, but she didn't think she was beautiful, which is ultimately what matters. So now I think she's like 15 at this point. Oops, I went ahead too much. Right there. Okay.
I was a kid that was raised to be a nice girl. You say yes, you do everything your dad asks. You don't ask any questions, and you just do it. And if I had an opinion wasn't to be spoken, and if it was, I was wrong. I couldn't control anything. And I believe in hindsight.
So she didn't have any control when she was in childhood, is what she's saying. So when she finally grew up and had some autonomy, now she's like, she really wanted control. And that's a huge factor in eating disorders, is like, you don't feel like you have control, and this is the one thing you can control. Eventually you end up losing control over that. When I was really orthorexic, yeah, I had very strict control over what I ate. Very good control. It was very stringent. It was very repetitive. It was like, I had it very dialed in. I had my own fitness app. Even then we had fitness apps, and I would track everything, and I knew exactly what the macros were, and I weighed everything. And eventually that failed. Eventually I started chewing and spitting stuff. Eventually I started to purge. Eventually I started to binge eat. So it's like, the one benefit of this was to have control. Like, now I don't even have control. So anyway, so let's keep going. She's going to start comparing herself to others. There we go.
And I could control. I wasn't the best flyer. And at the time, I was average. There was always a flyer.
Well, see, she thought she was average. She looked very good. If you look at her photos, she was kind of a stud. Probably the prom queen, valedictorian or something. But she never thought she looked good. And that's the only thing that mattered. That's really the only thing that ever matters. Like, what do you think of yourself? The whole world could think you are beautiful. But if you don't think you're beautiful, then it doesn't matter. People could say, oh, you look great. But if you don't think you look great, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much attention you get. It's like, it's never enough. Okay. So she doesn't feel like she is beautiful enough. So what does she do? What most people do. They restrict.
Young age, I never ate chips, candy, fries, ever, ever, ever. I would get.
This is her growing up. So she lived in a very strict environment. Again, her parents were into fitness. She knew what a healthy diet was. When I was growing up, I had all sorts of crap. Remember those Gushers candy? You would eat it and it would explode or something. Ice cream truck came. I had ice cream. In some ways, that was better because I knew nothing about nutrition at that age. Nothing. I knew nothing about nutrition when I was 18 or 19. They don't teach it in school. Who else was going to teach me? So this was her. No candy, no cookies, no this, no that. That was me at 21. That wasn't me at 11. I didn't give a crap when I was 11. I didn't know what carbohydrate was until I was 19. Okay. She knew that when she was 2 years old. Okay. Anyway, childhood doesn't always explain it. All right, keep going here.
Halloween baskets and Easter baskets and stockings, and I would hoard my food. I remember I would have drawers that my mom would pull out, and there would just be candy. I never ate it.
That's pretty good self-discipline, right? I mean, that's pretty good for a teenager to never have candy, especially on Halloween. I had so much candy on Halloween. I don't know how I didn't become obese, but I didn't care. All I cared about was I got free candy. But again, very dedicated. Anyway, I want to go to the part where she goes to college. Oh, no. She breaks her ACL. That's the good part. All right.
Out, I can't eat. And
okay, yeah. So she tears her ACL, and what does she think? I can't eat anymore because well, let's see.
I need to be able to be fit. I need to be able to be small enough when I can do this again. I need to be able to, like, I can't get fat. I had this fear in my mind, this lack of education.
Okay, lack of education, but also probably immature too. I mean, at this point, she's 16, 17 years old. You know, what does she know? And she didn't have a dietitian. She didn't know anything about nutrition. But even if she had known a lot about nutrition, would that have helped? You know, as long as she has this irrational fear of getting fat, then she's going to restrict. She's going to starve herself, which is exactly what she does. She goes down to like 85 pounds at one point, like very, very low. And I think she was like 5'6", 5'7". I mean, she was pretty big. She was a cheerleader, you know? All right.
Lack of education that said, if I can't work out, everything that I eat turns to fat.
That's all or nothing thinking, right? So just because you're not working out doesn't mean you're not burning anything. So if I do my typical workout for the day, I'm probably burning 2,600 calories a day. Okay. If I just sit and do nothing, like on a travel day where I'm just going place to place, I'm still probably burning 1,900, 2,000 calories. But again, this is the all or nothing mindset that you see among disordered eaters. You know, it's either this or that. I either eat my complete meal plan or I don't eat anything. If I don't exercise, then I can't eat it. And also there's this belief that I hear behind Heidi's words or underneath her words, like I have to earn it. You know, how many times have you heard that? Have you heard that? Like I have to earn my calories. You know, you don't hear it, but I think a lot of disordered eaters believe that. It's like if I'm not on the elliptical for 2 hours, I didn't earn it. You know, that sort of mentality.
I had no understanding at the time that my body burned calories just by living and just by moving. I didn't.
Hold on, where are we? All right, go ahead.
Understand that. And so I went on a 8-month starvation diet.
All right. So that's the beginning of her anorexia, was that injury, because she was so deathly afraid of gaining weight. I remember when I was orthorexic, I hurt my knee. I don't know what I did. To this day, I'm still not sure what it was. But one day after a run, my knee just started hurting. It was like 30 days before I can run again. I was just so terrified. I still ate. I didn't go on this anorexic diet, but I ended up losing weight because I wasn't eating starches. I would just have fruit and shrimp and I don't know what else, but which wasn't necessarily the wrong thing. Like if your expenditure goes down, then your consumption should go down. I mean, look at a lot of these athletes who retire and they're like massive, you know. I guess they got used to the portions, but the workouts ended. It's like, you don't really need that anymore. I'm not trying to justify what she did, but that was her thinking. All right, let's go to this next part is pretty good. It's like how her dad reacts.
About 95 pounds at the time. So I lost about 20 pounds. My cheer coach started getting worried about me and my dad began force feeding me. It was kind of an uproar. And when my dad would force feed me and make me eat a hamburger, it's all I could think about for the next 3 days.
All right. So I talked about the parents earlier. You know, how did her parents react? Well, this is one way. I'm going to force feed you a hamburger. There's nothing worse you could do than to tell your anorexic daughter that you have to eat this burger. You know, but what do parents know about this? I mean, what do they know about mental health? What do they know about addiction and eating disorders? But I couldn't think of anything worse other than like calling her fat or something like that. But that's not as bad as force feeding them. But that's what he did. Force fed her a burger. Don't force feed your daughter a burger. Anyway, let's see. Things are going to get worse here before they get better.
Everyone would go to bed and I would come out into the kitchen and I would eat and eat and eat and eat. And I'd go throw it up and I'd come back out and I would eat and eat. I mean, it was terrible. It was insane. And I think if I didn't have the control of my environment by my parents and the control that, you know, the schedule of cheerleading and school had, I would have been a complete disaster. Well,
I did this so many times. I would eat really well in front of other people. And then like when the lights went out, then I would binge, you know, like that late night binge and eat. Because I didn't want anybody to see me, you know, it was in secret. I mean, it's very duplicitous in a way. It's like you're putting on this show and saying, hey, look how healthy I eat. And then when nobody's looking, it's like you binge and then go purge and then you do it again. That's what she was doing. She makes another good point here that maybe it would have been worse if she had not had those external constraints. You know, an external constraint is a real gift when you have an eating disorder. It's like there's some restriction in your environment that forces you to make better choices. And for her, it was the cheerleading squad. It was living at home. But she's going to go to college, and then you're going to see how it goes. But having those restraints are actually a good thing. You know, having boundaries and limits and restraints are all very good things. You know, anything that compels you to behave better, I think, is a good thing. Thanks for the comments. I will get to the comments, I promise. But I want to get to her college years. All right, so eating in secret. We're going to go ahead here. Yeah, we have to skip ahead. All right,
He was in a very controlled environment, leaves home. I was a straight A student, like A+++, perfect. Left home, I was a train wreck. Like I had my first semester at ASU, I got D's and F's, which is just insane because I had gotten 1 B in my life prior in high school. Didn't go to class, didn't do anything because my life suddenly, I didn't have parameters.
Now she's at ASU. I think she's from like somewhere in Arizona. Goes to ASU, has all this freedom, which is a big problem when you're 18. You grow up in a house where there's a lot of like rules and limits and restrictions, and you got to do this. And then you go off to college and you're still young, and it's like, wow, I have all this freedom. I don't pretend to be a parenting coach. I don't have kids myself, but there is a fine line there. It's like, how much freedom should I give and how many limits should I put on my kid? You know, I find that a lot of times when you have these very, very strict parents and then the kids go off to college, it's like disaster. You know, that's apparently what happened to her. You know, she didn't have those restraints anymore. And now her whole life is devoted to this cycle, binge, purge, binge, purge, binge, purge. And now she's getting D's and F's. Why? Because so much of her mental energy, so much of her capacity is being diverted to this one behavior. That's what happens. Like you have a finite amount of attention, and when 70 or 80% of it is being diverted to this one behavior, you stop getting good results. You stop performing well in school. You stop performing well at work. It was like that for me. I remember I would be at work and I was just constantly thinking about fitness and nutrition, and I wasn't really like engaged with my work. It's kind of sad, it wasn't a bad job, but it's very self-centered in a way. I was like, hey, what did I eat and how much was that, and blah 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 blah. Attention, right? So that's her first semester at ASU. I can't imagine how her parents reacted to that. I like the way that she describes herself here.
I was a drug addict and food was my drug. I woke up in the morning and I thought about the foods I was gonna eat. First, I had the best of intentions. I'd say, I'm gonna have a great day. First, I'm gonna eat breakfast. The first bite of food that I would put in my mouth every single day was like a coke addict snorting cocaine.
I hope I don't get a strike for cocaine, but she said it in her video, but that's how she felt, right? This compulsion, like I have to do this. I need to get my next fix. What am I going to do without it? How can I live without it? This is the one thing I need. It's funny because at some point in her life, in my life, I didn't have an eating disorder. I wasn't binging. I wasn't chewing and spitting. I wasn't purging. And then over time, it became this indispensable habit. It's like, I have to do this. I have to do this. How am I going to get through the day? How am I going to cope with life? And that's how she's thinking here. It's like the one thing she must have every day. That's the definition of the compulsion. So I like this analogy because, yeah, at this point, she is basically addicted right there.
Stuffed myself to where I was so full, it actually hurt. For me, the high or the release, I don't even know if I would say the high, maybe it is a release, but it was in the purge for me because I felt like I was getting rid, like that, all of the hurt, all of the pain, all of the part of me that I didn't love, I was getting.
That's the appeal of purging. Whether you're purging or you are using laxatives or diuretics or working out for 2 or 3 hours after an episode, it feels good to take action. It feels good to do something about it. It feels good to correct a wrong. It feels good to get it out of you. It's like, oh man, it's almost better than the actual binge. in some ways. And that's why it's so freaking hard to beat this. It's like you have the reward of the binge, and then you have the reward of the purging, and then you tell yourself you'll never do it again. It's just this vicious cycle. So yeah, sometimes purging can actually be better than the actual binge. Not saying you should do it, but I'm just saying that's the psychology of it. I'm going to make one last point because this is a long video. She brings up a lot of good points here. I'm probably just going to play it from here anyway.
Out and into the world, you know, I was getting it out of me and away from me, and there was an odd sense of like purity and cleanliness that I felt when I was empty.
Yeah, and that's very common among disordered eaters, like this sense of emptiness. You know, like my gut is empty, my stomach is empty. I'm not gonna lie, I like that feeling too, like being very light, especially when I wake up in the morning, I want to go work out. I like feeling empty. Or when I travel, you know, that's another time I like to feel empty. But for her, it was more like emotional. It's like I feel empty, I don't have anything in me, and that's the appeal, right? It's like if I purge, I will have this great feeling of emptiness. You know, I'll have that empty stomach. That's how a lot of anorexics think. They like that empty feeling, like they get rewarded when they don't eat. Okay, why? Because they feel light. They feel that emptiness. They don't feel like there's anything in them. That's what she's feeling here. That's why she kept purging. All right, you know what? I'm going to call it here. I have like 10 or 15 more points that I want to make, and I don't know. I don't have the time tonight. I have to limit these at about 30 or 40 minutes. I'm going to read some of the comments here. Haley and Jennifer. Jennifer, let her video play more. Too many interruptions. I know, but I'm trying to avoid copyright strikes. So if I play for too long, I could potentially get a copyright strike. So I don't want to do that. I just play the essential part of the video, and then I, make my point. Haley, a couple. Even with orthorexia and restricted eating, for me at least, something to perfect. Perfectionism is very basic. Yeah. So when I became very interested in diet, nutrition, fitness, I would look at other people and I'd judge them and be like, wow, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to have a dad bod. I don't want to be 55 and overweight and have a pot belly. It's like, I'm not doing very well in life at anything. And this is me at like 22, 23, 24. But hey, at least I can do this better. At least I eat better than them. At least I'm healthier than them. And the truth was, I was the least healthy of all of them. That's kind of the irony. That's the irony of it all, right? I intended to become healthier, and I became the least healthy of them all. So yeah, I know. It's perfect things that you should perfect, right? What is your craft? Like, what is your skill in life? That's what you should be perfecting. Perfect your day. What's your routine? What are your habits? Work on those. Don't try to perfect your diet regimen. I mean, make upgrades as necessary. Is my diet perfect? No, but I'm not going to fight for that last 3 or 4%. It's not worth it. Haley again, I went to the gym with a cast on my foot, lower leg. I was legitimately angry that I only worked out for 45 minutes. Yeah, I used to have this minimum too. If it wasn't an hour, it wasn't a real workout. Or if I didn't hit the certain calorie number on the treadmills, like wasn't a real workout. If I ate, but if I didn't run at a certain speed, it didn't really count. All my workouts had to be like a certain time. It had to be 45 minutes, 60 minutes, hour and a half. It couldn't be an hour and 22 minutes. It just wasn't perfect enough. Now I am used to doing things that for like unusual time limits, like it might be 36 minutes. Okay. Not everything has to be so clean for me anymore. I hope that makes sense. Before giving into pain, I didn't feel like I earned eating either. Yeah, earning your calories, that's a really disordered thought. I don't mean to be like condescending, but it is. I mean, a lot of disorders think that, like, I have to earn it. And if I don't work out, or if I am on an airplane all day, I shouldn't eat anything. Yeah, it's definitely something to work on, but at least you recognize that that's a problem. So what's the alternative belief? What are you going to replace that with? Because if you're in bed all day, you still need like 1,000, 1,200, 1,400 calories. I don't know what your basal metabolic rate is, but even just sitting there, I mean, your kidneys and your heart, all your muscles, they're still using stuff, right? Isabella, I remember watching her video and relating a lot to how her binge and purging distracted her from college. That could have been part of it too. you know, maybe she just wasn't ready for college. I mean, how many 18-year-olds are truly ready for college? You know, when you go to college at 18, 19, do you know what your destiny is? Do you know what your skill set is? Do you know where you fit into the world? I mean, I certainly didn't. Maybe you did. Heidi probably didn't. Yeah. And so there was all this new stress and new demands. And I don't know how many credits she was taking. She probably had very high standards for herself. But the binging purging, it does become this distraction. It becomes this coping mechanism. You know, it's like, this is the one thing. And all this other stuff over here, reality is over here. And I'm in my own, you know, private universe. Thing is, as soon as you finish that cycle, you go right back into the real world. And now it's even worse because now you have, you know, the after effects of binging and purging. I'm in my last semester. Great. Ready to graduate. And I am extremely motivated to stop the bulimia. 2 weeks straight now. Great. Make it 3. Also, don't worry if you like go 14 days without an episode, then you have an episode. The key is to get back up and keep moving. You know, that's what's important for you. But yeah, at college is a really vulnerable time. You know, high school, college, that's when we're bold. That's when we take chances. That's when we are susceptible to new ideas. We don't really have filters in place. We don't know how to judge and evaluate new information. We're more impulsive at that age. That's why I think so many of these behaviors start between 16 and 23. You know, it's a very vulnerable part of your life. And the bad thing is, just because you turn 24, 25, it doesn't mean the behaviors stop. They can follow you, even though you are maturing, even if you are living with purpose, they can still follow you. You know, that's what sucked. I mean, I was 31 and I was still dealing with this stuff. I was on a forum the other day and there was this woman who was 57 and still binging purging. 57. You know, so it's sometimes you mature out of it. A lot of times you don't. I'm not trying to scare you, but good job on that 2 week streak. You know, can you extend it? Can you keep going? Can you bounce back if you have another episode? Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there. Again, I said like 30 or 40 minutes and we're right in that range. I have more points. I will probably finish this later this week, no later than next Sunday. Because I'm getting more and more requests like, hey, check out this video. Check out, I don't know. Who was that one that I forget? I don't know. But it's like, hey, here's another video. Here's another story. Here's another person. Check out this channel. It's like, I'll get to them as soon as I can. Jennifer, I wonder if she still struggles. She looks quite fit and thin. I mean, Jennifer, I don't know. I don't know her. It's like, hey, Heidi, are you still struggling? I imagine she's not. You know, I think she comes off as pretty genuine. I mean, she could be, but I think eating disorders are often a lifetime struggle. They can be. But remember, go back to one of my original points. There's always hope. You know, for every case, there is a solution. I really do believe that. I don't think anybody is beyond repair. Nobody's beyond repair. Nobody believes that either. If you really thought you were beyond repair, I'm not talking about you, Jennifer, but if you really thought you were beyond repair, you would just stop watching the videos, you would get off the forums, you would stop reading books, you would stop seeking help, and you'd just be like, screw it, this is my life. That's one thing I never did. I never conceded this. I never said, I am going to live this way the rest of my life. Like, there is a solution. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to get myself out of this. And I did. Okay. So even if you think like you have the worst case ever, you probably don't. And there still is a solution. That's the great thing about the age we live in. You know, we have these stories, we have live streams, we have forums, we've got coaches, we've got so many resources. That's what's awesome about it. It's not 1990 anymore. I mean, good Lord, if it were 1990, what would you do? But some thoughts are, yes, they can be, but you can change the way you interpret those thoughts and what you do with those thoughts. Some things, like I call it residual effects, vestigial effects. Some thoughts and patterns that you develop during your eating disorder days, they can follow you for many, many years. Like they never quite go away. You know, maybe that's what Heidi meant when she said, once an addict, always an addict. So some of those thoughts can just be there because they're so entrenched and they just never completely go away. It doesn't mean you can't recover, and it doesn't mean you can't live a really good life too. That's what's more important. You know, can you get to a point where you can live a sane, healthy, happy life, even though you have these, irrational thoughts in your head. All right. That is it for the questions. Thanks for the questions, and thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Even if I have just one person, it's always gratifying. I will finish the rest of the points later this week. I haven't decided when, but you will see me pop up at some point. Also, don't forget, check out the Rational Eating Masterclass Facebook group. It is a free group. I'll put a link in the box below. You can also check out, join my email list. Got that going too. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And I will see you soon. Bye.